The following program is produced by Londonderry residents. The views and opinions expressed are not necessarily the views and opinions of the LACTV staff or its volunteers, and should not be considered an endorsement by CTV 20 or its staff and volunteers.
Well, good morning, Londonderry. We're back here with Concord Conversations about what's going on in Concord as represented by your state reps. With me today is Wayne MacDonald, and we have a lot of things still going on in Concord, and that's where some of our reps are now, still working out issues with committees of conference, as they're called. This is where the House has put in legislation and the Senate has put in legislation, and when they don't quite coincide or they're in opposition to each other, what happens is committees are formed, usually 2 or 3 state reps and 2 or 3 senators form a committee, and they try to work out the differences in this so-called committee of conference, and that either generates some modified version of what the 2 groups were trying to achieve, or if there really is an impasse, the legislation dies and then is perhaps available to be resubmitted in the following year. In this case would be in the fall of 2023. We have another opportunity to submit legislation. And if that's the case, then it goes through the same process again that it went through in 2022/23, and that is it goes to an individual committee that's been assigned by the Speaker, and they hold public hearings on the legislation, get testimony not only from the public but from other state agencies. The committee then debates the issue, holds additional public hearings, and then takes a vote that's passed on to the entire legislature as to what their vote is, and then the legislature votes on it. And if that passes the legislature, then it goes to the Senate, and the Senate takes a look at it, and they vote on it. And if everybody agrees, the House and the Senate, then it goes to the governor for final approval and signature. It sounds like a long process. It is a long process, and it's designed such that the citizens have a chance to provide their inputs to make sure that everybody's been heard, and that nothing happens in any back rooms. It's all public. And it's all through public hearings. And with me today, let me reintroduce Wayne MacDonald, who is here. He's the chair of a committee also that's been hearing committees of conference as well. Welcome, Wayne.
Well, thank you, Tom. It's great to be here with Representative Tom Dolan. There's 7 state representatives here in Londonderry, and again, some of our colleagues are tied up with committees of conference this week. That's the last, this week is kind of dedicated to that purpose. We have our last House session coming up next Thursday, June 29th, where we'll be voting the recommendations of the various committees of conference up or down. It's my understanding that on the House side, we have 12 committees of conference set up. In the committee I'm privileged to chair, Health and Human Services and Elderly Affairs, we have 2 committees of conference on House Bill 610 and 611, which deal with bail reform and cannabis issues and degrees of legalization. I'm kind of on light duty a little bit this week because I've recently had a bit of been in and out of the hospital, but I have we have a very able vice chairman on the committee, and she's kind of spearheading the effort on our side. So there's 2 committees on the Health and Human, 2 committees of conference for Health and Human Services and Elderly Affairs. There's 10 other House committees of conference on the House side. I believe there's 9 on the Senate side, 21 in total. And those are all meeting this week. And I know, for example, Representative Thomas, who was with us at the last on the last show, he's actually at one right now as we speak. So we'll see how those unfold. But it's been a great session. And I don't know, do we want to get into the budget now, Tom, or do we want to wait for a few minutes?
Yeah, let's wait for a few minutes. Let's talk about these committees of conference because it's kind of an insider discussion, if you will. A lot of people don't understand what happens and how it happens and why. I'll just give you an example of one that I was a part of yesterday, and that is one of the committees that I'm on is Executive Departments and Administration, ED&A as it's called. And we had a meeting on a piece of legislation, it was House Bill 461, where we had 4 committee members from that committee, 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans, and we had 3 members from the Senate. So the 7 of us met to kick around this piece of legislation that had to do with staffing and retirement impact to the retirement system and so forth. And the Senate didn't care for the House bill, and they voiced their opinion. And they wanted more time to think about it. And the way you do that is you put in a committee of conference that goes off and studies it for a while. And the House, our representatives, the 4 of us on the House side, didn't want to do that. We have, in fact, the other committee that I'm on is the Committee on Commissions, which basically its mission is to try to hold down or eliminate those committees and commissions that we just have too many of them, and try to reduce the cost of government. We have these committees that get together. Some of them haven't met for a couple of years, and we're trying to root those out and find those in the process and kill them if we can. And if we really need to keep them afloat, then we can always put in new legislation to reinstitute a committee that had been canceled. But in this particular case, as an example, the 7 of us couldn't agree. And when you have a committee of conference, one of the rules is all 7 of you, or all members of the conference, have to be in agreement to whatever the resolution might be. So we couldn't come to an agreement. We had an impasse at that point. So the legislation died that was submitted, and we'll go back to the original sponsor of the legislation and suggest that they may want to consider resubmitting that for the fall session with some additional explanation and so forth. Again, it's a little technical as to the details and so forth, but just that's the process of how it works. And again, we would go through the whole process all over again and make sure that everybody understood what was happening. And we'd bring in the technical experts from the state side of things as to how the retirement system might be impacted or not be impacted and so forth. So it's very interesting if you're a political junkie. It's not so interesting if you're just casually thinking about how things work. But Wayne, you want to continue in the impact of the budget?
Sure. One of the things that we're especially happy about, and it's one of the few times that I think almost everybody is happy about this, is the fact that of the various pieces of legislation that the House may have amended that the Senate sent over, or that the Senate amended that the House sent over and that required committees of conference, a couple of pieces of legislation that did not require committees of conference or a committee of conference is House Bill 1 and House Bill 2, which is the state budget. House Bill 1 basically says this is what we're going to spend. House Bill 2 says this is, gets into the weeds and the very specific details of how that's going to operate. And as Tom Dolan knows, the House voted on June 8th to pass a budget. There was an incredible amount of negotiations that went on between the House and the Senate and, of course, the governor. It always starts with the governor's initial proposal back in, I believe it was February. But House Bill 1, which is always the easier vote because that's just the overall numbers, that passed 351 to 25. And it was obviously bipartisan because the legislature, the House especially, is essentially evenly split. I believe it's 199 to 197. We have a couple of vacancies. We have a member of both parties that have gone to independent status. But the House Bill 1, the overall budget passed 351 to 25. And then the House Bill 2, where the specifics are really laid out and get into a lot of nitty-gritty types of issues. There was a state employee pay raise, for example, in there. There was increased Medicaid reimbursements to hospitals and so forth. There were a lot of other things. There was an ultimate elimination of the interest and dividends tax. That passed 326 to 53. And they were both, it was overwhelmingly supported by members of both parties. And there were members of both parties among the minority that voted against it. But interesting to point out that despite the debate and some of the concerns expressed during the discussions prior to the final vote, it's been 20 years that although the House has concurred with the Senate budget in the past, it has been more than 20 years that this kind of cooperation occurred. And our own Speaker of the House from Londonderry, Representative Packard, was quoted as saying, I believe we have kind of made history by this kind of vote and support. And again, if I could just touch on some of the highlights, the total budget, $15.2 billion for the biennium. It's a 2-year budget. Increases Medicaid provider reimbursements, education funding, 12% pay raise for state employees, additional money for housing, homeless, and child care, and an additional support for higher education, nearing what the two systems received before the state funding was slashed in half in the 2012-2013 budget. This budget that was passed is the smallest of the three that was considered. Senate budget initially the Senate budget is the smallest, actually, that we concurred on the Senate budget. That was the smallest. The $15.2 billion was the smallest of the three considered. The governor had originally proposed $15.2 billion, and the House $15.7 billion. So anyway, we're very proud of that. There was an incredible amount of relief that we did not have to go to a committee of conference because, as Representative Dolan has indicated, anything can happen when it goes to a committee of conference. It has to be unanimous agreement for the legislation to be approved. A budget has to exist, obviously, for the state to meet its financial obligations. Otherwise, it gets into a thing called a continuing resolution, which can only be temporary, and ultimately a budget does have to be passed. And you end up spending more money when you have a continuing resolution, and you just say, okay, we're going to spend money, and we're going to pay the state's bills on an indefinite basis until the legislature and the governor can come to an agreement. That's not good government, and it's kudos to all the members of the House and the Senate and the governor, and especially House and Senate leadership and the governor for being able to work out through. It's always a very difficult, challenging process, and again, the highest praise goes to all those who were involved in these negotiations. Ken Weiler, the chairman of the House Finance Committee, all of the leadership of the Senate Finance Committee, Senate President, Speaker, and so forth. And again, Tom, I don't know if you want to add anything to that, but I think it's a lot to be proud of, and both parties are proud of it because it took a bipartisan effort to get it done.
It did. I think we made real good progress, especially with the House so evenly divided. It had been predicted that we'd get nothing done
Right.
Because of that, and quite to the contrary, we've had good compromise, good discussions of give and take. And in order to get the things done that needed to get done, it's I'll say philosophically, it's easy to sit back and complain, and complain about the other side. It's much tougher to dig in and actually govern and make things happen. And when you do that, there is some give and take, and hopefully you don't have to compromise on those things that are very important to you or your principles of government, and you can still get things done. So the fact that we've done that is a good comment on all of us.
I think it's important, and I know I mentioned it earlier, but I mentioned a number of things that the budget spends money on and increases funding for. But there's the surpluses that are built in. New Hampshire's always been a very well-managed state, and especially the last several years, we've maximized every economic advantage we can. And but we're very proud. Both parties are very proud of the fact that we do not have an income tax in New Hampshire. That has been challenged over the years because of the interest and dividends tax, and people say, well, the interest and dividend taxes, returns on investment. It is an income tax of sorts. And this budget not only spends some money and increases funding, but it also eliminates that tax. And so we are going to truly be an income tax-free state, and that's something to be proud of. So it doesn't just spend money, it also eliminates some taxation that has been around, I believe, for a century. I believe the interest and dividends tax has been around for a century. Literally, I think it was in 1923 that it was originally passed. So it's great that we're getting rid of it, and it's certainly for those people who pension income and other things. Anyone who's got any investments, and it certainly applies to the elderly in many cases, or senior citizens, retirees. That's they rely on investment income, and that's not going to be taxed anymore. That's going to be phased out under this current budget. It's not immediate, but it is going to be phased out. So it was supposed to happen later, a year or two, I think, later than it actually is going to happen. So that's just one of many things that this budget achieves, and again, it's something we're very proud of.
Right. Changing gears just a little bit, I wanted to talk some local issues where the residents of Londonderry, as well as residents across the state, have just recently received or receiving in the mail this week their property tax bills.
I've received mine.
And that's, again, always an opportunity to heighten your awareness as to what's being done in the local community and what monies that are being spent. It's important to understand that in our state, since we don't have an income tax or a sales tax, virtually all the money generated for local government, both the schools and the town government and the library government, is through property taxes. And while it's a tough pill to swallow, the fact that our local property taxes really have not gone up in general for a very long time, unless you are improving when you improve your property, you put a shed into your property, or add a pool, for example, or put an addition on your home, your property value will go up, and your corresponding property taxes will as well. So that's driven by personal decisions that each individual homeowner makes, and those folks that are property owners that don't actually reside in their property, but are renters, if you will, or people who rent to others, their property taxes are what they are, and typically they pass on those property taxes to the renters that occupy those properties. So there's a little bit of complexity there that goes. But I think one of the things that in overall context, I mean, a lot of people like to complain about this or that, and rather than complaining, I like to look at what are the successes in our community. And one of the things that is something we are very fortunate are about what you saw recently, the high school and the local community grades, the local public schools are doing such a wonderful job. I mean, it was amazing to see all those pictures of the graduates of the graduating class posted on telephone poles across the community. That was a wonderful thing to see, and it's my understanding that those students get to keep those pictures of themselves as they get taken down. They're given to the individual student, which is a very nice touch for the community. We typically have what's been known as the best marching band in the entire east part of the United States. East of the Mississippi, last time I checked, Londonderry is without question the best marching band east of the Mississippi. And we've been overseas to events. We've been to Disney. We've been to a number of different, to New York City, to St. Patrick's Day. And it's a tribute to the program that we have in the community and the dedication of the students that come and practice. I live fairly close to the schools. I live behind, as the crow flies, where the kindergarten is, and I can hear the students practicing their music for the marching band. A great thing to hear in the background, and they practice so late into the evening. It's amazing the dedication that they have. And the sports teams as well. We just celebrated sports championships at the high school level, and I believe Speaker Packett's going to be making an award.
Proclamation, I believe, tonight at the school board meeting.
Yep.
So we're, and several of us will be there in attendance. I don't know if the entire delegation from Londonderry, entire legislative delegation could be at the school board meeting tonight, but several of us will be, and certainly want to honor everyone for their efforts and their success.
Also, there was a recent public display for the changes in our road network over by Stonehenge and Route 28 as it gets closer to Derry. There's a proposal to put in a rotary over there. There was also a proposal to put in a stoplight as well. So that's all in consideration and moving forward. The town has partially funded that, as well as the state. So that's a good thing. Other thing I wanted to throw a positive vibe out to Dave Woley and the Public Works Department. It's the season for paving in the warm weather, so some of the new pavement upgrades. I know High Range Road has some new pavement on it, and I travel to Nashua often for a number of different reasons, and it's such a different, I mean, you drive in Londonderry over these roads and it's just smooth as glass, and then when you get to Nashua, it's like driving on a washboard. It's just, I don't know what's going on with their public works over there, but it's just not very good. But going back to the days of Giannis, I used to always say to him, and I would tell him I didn't like, or I did like, a certain project he was working on. He would be very responsive and either fix it or explain to me what was going on. And Dave Woley has picked up the gauntlet and gone forward with a great Public Works Department effort. There's always a road or two that you'd like to have some more potholes filled in, but I tell you, when we resurface a road or we fix a road, it's like glass, and those are the expectations in Londonderry. If it doesn't come out right, or if there's a dip, or there's still a leftover pothole, we make sure it gets fixed.
To that point, I live over on Dickey Street over near the Derry line, and Hillside Avenue is the end of my street, and there's been a pothole as I go up the hill, the back way out of my street, and I'm thinking to myself, boy, I hope they fill that soon. And coming here this morning for this taping, they've already done it, and it's almost like they read my mind very proactively. And to Tom's point, it's just like glass. It's a beautiful job, smooth. It's just just like you're kind of almost traveling on air as you pull out onto that newly paved street. So yeah. No, we talked about earlier about how well state government is managed, especially over these last several years. But to Tom's point, local government is well managed too. Our schools are great, our teachers are great, our students excel, and Public Works is just one of the many examples where local departments really do a good job.
Yeah, one of the things that it didn't get a lot of press coverage, but the state reps met with the school board a few weeks ago to make sure that the offerings for our high school students included in what I will call industrial arts type of things. If somebody wants to go in the trades, wants to be an electrician or a plumber or whatever, that we can provide educational opportunities. Not everybody is destined for a 4-year college degree. Somebody might be getting a D- or a C- on their algebra homework, but they can put together an internal combustion engine like nobody's business, and that type of skill set needs to be recognized and offered to be developed. So we put together the communication between the Department of Education at the state, and this is one of the things we can do to help facilitate success in the community with the school board, and they were very appreciative, and my understanding, they've already now met with Frank Edelbute, the Commissioner of Education, and they're working on additional offerings. Some of it's tuition reimbursed, some of it's some of the students are going to get additional pay while they're out working as journeymen or as assistants to tradespeople, learning the craft. So it's a wonderful opportunity. One last thing, because we're about ready to end the program. I want to mention the fact that this time in the community, this time in the calendar, our local farms are now offering fresh produce. The one that excites me is the strawberry picking that's I know happening over at Sunnycrest and in other locations. So those strawberries that we've been getting from California just can't compare with the local stock that we have. The flavor and buying local here helps our local farmers. We seem to be doing well. Some places have gotten damage from hailstones. We don't seem to have gotten any damage recently. The hail, and this time of year, the farmers are always nervous about hail preventing damage to the apple crop, and we didn't really have any hail or damage so far yet, not that I'm aware of. So, with that, I think we're about ready to wrap. We'll see the rest of our reps in our next show, and we hope to be able to invite our two newest reps, Representative Perez and Representative Dunn.
Representative Dunn, by the way, does double duty as Representative Dolan once did. He's on the town council as well as being a state representative, so he does double duty. And Representative Perez is on the Judiciary Committee, and Representative Dunn is on resources and resources and economic development, I believe.
Right.
And
right.
so they're and they're both doing a great job in Concord, working hard. And I mean, Tom, you're in your third term, right?
Right.
I'm in my second. And we both obviously start off as a freshman, and they hit the ground running. They're working hard to serve the community as we all are, and I'm hearing great things about what they're achieving. So we've got a great delegation, and we're all very honored to be representing you. And we thank you for the opportunity.
So thanks for joining us today. Hopefully that gets you a little bit informed about what's happening up in Concord and what your state reps are doing for you and to help with the success of this wonderful community called Londonderry. Thank you very much.
preceding program was produced by Londonderry residents. The views and opinions expressed are not necessarily the views and opinions of the LACTV staff or its volunteers and should not be considered an endorsement by CTV 20 or its staff and volunteers.